Welcome to Enlightenment Unknown, Life of a Spiritual Nomad. Join Reiki Master and quantum healing expert Wes Coons as he guides listeners through the depths of self-discovery and spiritual enlightenment to uncover the version of you we haven't met yet. Hello and welcome back to Enlightenment Unknown, Life of a Spiritual Nomad. Wes, how are you doing today?
Hey, today's great. How are you, Andrea? Thanks for being here.
Yeah, I'm wonderful, and we have just finished up episode 2, if everyone's been following along, which saw you do your vision quest, which I thought was really fascinating.
Yeah, the vision quest was interesting, that's for sure. So somebody sent me a message on, I don't know, one of the platforms teasing about the bear. So, yeah.
My favorite part was the dragon that you were only supposed to ask one question.
Yeah. Yeah. So let me ask one question, then set you with that entity for like 16 hours straight, staring at each other.
I liked it.
Yeah. The normal things we talk about. So what are we going to do today?
Well, I don't know. You said that you were going to talk about one of, or maybe both of, because you've had more than one exorcism. Is that correct?
Yes. And just so you know, I do not recommend it. It is not fun. But we are at that stage where, some of these things are coming into play. And so if we're going to talk about the exorcism, I get to talk about my friend Danny. I love Danny. At the time I met Danny, I was married, living out in Chesapeake, and we wanted to have horses. So, it's one of those cool ideas that sounded great on paper until you had the horses. They're sketchy. I don't like horses. That damn thing, I remember trying to ride my daughter's house, Biddy, one time, and I'm like, I'm going to ride this horse for the very first time bareback. I think I lasted about 1/10 of 1 second, and when I hit the ground, you just hear the air leaving my body at such a powerful level. And of course, my daughter's laughing her ass off, and the horse is eating grass right behind my head. Oh, that was painful. So yeah, that was the extent of my horseback riding. However, we were clearing this 8.5 acres. There was all these hardwood trees that had fallen, and long story short, we put an ad in the paper. You could come cut your own wood. So every weekend there'd be 16, 18 families cutting up wood. This happened for months. And then one day, this skinny blonde-haired kid shows up, and he starts his chainsaw, and everybody stopped to look because it was like a Harley Davidson turning on, right? And that was Danny. I love Danny. He's the most amazing young man. I love him like a son. So that's how I met Danny, cutting wood. And so one day he reaches out, and I was living in my camper, and he was just checking on me. He knew things were going on. He didn't know what it was. And he said, what you up to, buddy? Blah, blah, blah. And we're talking, and I told him just out of the blue, hey, if you know anybody that can do an exorcism, I need one done on the house. I didn't know what I was asking for. I knew that term. I didn't know clearly what I was looking for. And he says, the funniest thing you said that is this morning, the minister from 2 doors down was walking past my house, and he looked at me and said, Danny, if you know anybody that needs an exorcism, give them my number, right?
That's fascinating. That's like the universe just lining things up for you.
Oh, yeah, that was God in play 100%. And so we start laughing. I'm like, you're joking. So Danny gives me this guy's number, and I give him a call, and, I don't know what to say to this guy. And he was real nice. And, we talked for a little bit. We got off the phone, and a few weeks go by, and, he calls me up, and I think it was like a Thursday or Friday evening about 5 o'clock. And I don't really remember what it was, but I remember, it was summertime. It was really hot. And he says, son, why don't you come see me? We're going to end this today for you. And I didn't know what he was talking about. So I called Ty. I said, hey, Ty, what are you doing, man? And I said, this I don't know what he was. I guess a minister or preacher.
Priest of some sort, I
No,
guess.
he wasn't a priest. No, he's just, I don't know, some cat that he ran a fucking church, whatever you call that. I'm not a religious person. So I said, this guy wants me to come, and I don't know what we're going to do. Do you want to go? And he's like, sure, hey, why not? So we load Kennedy in the truck, and we're taking Betsy, you know, my big-ass diesel excursion, and we're driving, and if you're familiar with this market, we're going out 64, you know where the Twin Bridges are, and the last exit before you get there is where we're supposed to get off. And it was the most bizarre experience. You know, Ty and I weren't talking, and it was almost like I was in this trance, Andrea. It was really bizarre. And it happened slowly. And whatever it was the darkness keeping me from going to that facility, keeping me from going to that church. And I remember Ty looking at me and says, hey man, how much farther do we have to go? I said, bro, it's just, you know, it's the last exit before the Twin Bridges. And he's like, we crossed that 35 minutes ago. And so if you're familiar with this area, I mean, you're out there. You're going out in the country type, you know, out to past Suffolk and stuff like that. And I remember looking at him. I'm like, what? I mean, what are you talking about? And as I'm driving, I could see this loop in my mind. It was like they were looping my vision every 15 or 20 seconds. So all I seen was the same patch of road over and over, right?
So to you were still on the bridge?
To me, I was before the bridge.
Oh.
You know, and I was a little discombobulated. I wasn't seeing clearly. I wasn't thinking clearly. The energy of the cabin of the truck was bizarre. It was weird. It was like going into the Twilight Zone. It was the weirdest fucking thing I've ever experienced. And so as we started to talk about it, you know, I'm shaking my head a little bit, I'm rolling down the window, and all of a sudden that fades away. So, you know, we make the U-turn and we go back, and we're heading back towards Chesapeake. And, you know, eventually we figure out where we're going, and it's basically, it's across the street from Grassfield High School. So that's where we went. And I didn't want to bring the dog in because I was just, you know, it's a church and stuff like that. So I left the truck running. And as we walked into the building, you know, it was like going into a movie, and things were slowing down. The energy in there was bizarre. You know, things were slowing down, and we walked into the pastor's office. And as you walk in, the room was probably 15 by 10. And, you know, there was a desk and a computer, and on the right side of the wall, they had some filing cabinets and some things and some boxes and stuff. It was kind of a storage room type, his personal office. And you can see these rats running across the wall, and then all of a sudden this black snake across the chair. And as I'm seeing these things running through his office, the pastor had another guy there. I don't know who he was. I don't even remember the pastor's name at this time. But it was the four of us in the room, and it was almost like the room had a little bit of fog in it, at least for me. And I remember picking my cell phone up, and I was going to take pictures, because at that time I was taking pictures of everything that was bizarre. And I remember the pastor was really aggressive when we walked in the room. It shocked me. He's like, what are you doing? What are you doing with that? Put it down. You need to just sit down. And I looked at him, and I looked at Ty. I'm like, what the fuck is happening, man? I said, do you see the snakes? I mean, do you see the rats in the room? And I remember Ty looking at me, and he said, no, I don't see that. And the pastor's like, sit down. And I didn't realize I was there for an exorcism. I didn't know that I needed one. Nobody had shared that with me. And sorry, this is a little difficult for me to share this story. So I sit down and, he introduces the other guy, and he's teaching the other guy how to do this kind of work, apparently. And I remember looking around the room and just there was these black rats running across the table and the energy was just swirling. It was so bizarre. I felt like I was drunk. And he's like, "What are you doing?" And I looked at him and I said, "I'm looking at the fucking rats. What are you fucking looking at?" I mean, he was being so aggressive towards me. And I didn't understand what was, the purpose of all that. And he starts to tell me, "In the name of Jesus Christ, I command you, tell me your name." And I guess at that point I realized, I don't know if I knew it was an exorcism really, but I knew there was something wrong. Because on the left side of my body, I started to uncontrollably shake and my arms started throwing around and bouncing. It was like going up in the air over my head. And it was so, so painful. And I remember just being scared to death. I could feel something inside me that I didn't know was there. I knew that thing had crawled down into my throat. That had already happened. But, being able to comprehend what that is, to feel that and to have to experience that for the very first time and come to the reality that I was in fucking trouble. I was in so much trouble, I didn't know what to do. And the look on Ty's face, he looked panicked. And all I could think about was my dog being out in the truck. I was worried about her. And, what if the truck stopped running and it was hot out and the air conditioning stopped running and the pasture is just like, barking these words at me and quoting things out of the Bible. And every time he did, it got more and more painful. God, it hurt so fucking bad. I couldn't see straight. And he took holy water and splashed it on me. And it felt like he was throwing hot oil on my skin. I did not understand that. So we were there about 3 hours. I remember about 15 minutes of that. It felt like 15 minutes, maybe a little bit longer. And I remember my arm just uncontrollably flailing around nonstop. And I could feel that vibration like through my body, like I was having seizures. And he said, "Tell me your name. Tell me your name." And I heard this name and it was like George or something. He said, "That's not it. Jesus, torture what is inside of him." And I remember when he said that, I just screamed out in pain as it hurt so fucking bad. I mean, it was like my insides were on fire. I couldn't control my body. And I was fucking terrified. And I guess, I don't know, at some point I think I don't know if I blacked out, but the next thing I realized I was consciously in control, I remember looking around. I was looking around and he's like, "What are you looking for?" And I said, "I'm looking for a pair of scissors." And he said, "Why?" I said, "Because I'm going to kill all three of you motherfuckers with those scissors." And I remember when I said that, I was so embarrassed. I said, "I'm sorry. Those aren't my words. I promise I'm not going to kill you." And all three of them, Andrea, all three of them, they slid their chairs back about 6 inches. And, but I was not in control. And he said, "Jesus, torture that being in his body." And I just remember leaning back and just screaming. It was like somebody pouring hot oil down my throat inside me. And I couldn't control anything. It was the most painful experience I've ever experienced in my life. And after a while, he kept saying, "Tell me your name. Tell me your name. In the name of Jesus Christ, tell me your name." And it said its name. And I'm not going to repeat it. I'm not going to give you the name of it. And I yelled his name out. I thought, cool, it's over, right? You know, we have his name. And that's when it got worse. Because as he called it by its name and was commanding it to leave my body, it did not want to go. And I just remember, I just wanted to die. I just didn't want to do it anymore. I was fucking tired. I was broken. I was scared. And to have something control you like that is unnerving, to say the least. And he just kept bellowing at me. "I command you to leave. In the name of Jesus Christ, I rebuke you. I command you to leave. I command you to leave." And that felt like that went on for days. And at some point, it's like somebody took a knife and flayed my skin off as it left. And I remember just my body shaking. I could feel it coming out of me, out through my back. And all of a sudden, I was fully present for the first time that evening. I remember asking him, "Where did it go? Where did it go?" I was worried that it was going to get my dog. And he looks at me, he says, "Don't worry about us. None of your business. How many more are there?" And I told him, I said, "There are no more." And I knew there were more. I just couldn't do it anymore. And he's like, "Are you sure?" I'm like, "Oh yeah, I'm sure. Yeah, I'm fine, I'm sure." And when he threw holy water this time, for whatever reason, I didn't react like I did before. Something Sandra Grace taught me later, that the big demons will push the little demons out in front, so when they get taken away, the person doing the work thinks that it's done. And the big ones are really good at hiding. And that's what had happened. And I remember just sitting there and looking at everybody, and the look on Ty's face, I mean, he looked terrified. You know, the extra guy learning to do this work was like, "Holy fucking shit, what was that?" I'm like, "Dude, I don't know, man." I said, "I don't know. I didn't know what I was even getting into." And I remember I just wanted out of that place. I wanted out, away from that man. And we talked for a minute or two, and then he let me go. And, you know, when we got outside, it had cooled off. And I looked at Ty and I said, I need a fucking drink after that. And I just remember looking across the street at my children's school, because at the end of the day, I had just finished going through a divorce, and I didn't get to see my kids, even though they were adults. They weren't in my life. And at that point in time, and I just remember as I stood there, I felt the cool air on my skin. As you know, I felt better. I knew there was a problem still, but I didn't even fucking want to think about that. I was just basking in the beautiful fresh air of the country. out there and feeling that cool air on my skin. I'd been sweating so much, I was just uncomfortable. And I had some kind of comfort seeing my children's school, thinking about going there for football and things of that nature, just wishing for a better time in my life. You know, at that point, I lost so much. What I didn't realize was it hadn't even gotten hard yet. You know, the demons knew Lakota could fix things. They knew I was finding my way. And the beauty and the pain of all that was I didn't give up. Yeah, I had my guardian angel. I had Ty there, and I had my Kennedy. This episode is hard for me. So we get in the truck, and of course I made a joke. I don't think either one of us expected all of that. And we start going back home, you know, like it's normal. And I take Ty and I drop him off. I tell him I love him. And Kennedy and I head back to the camper. I didn't comprehend at that time I still had another exorcism to go. And really the rebirthing ceremony on the mountain was the third exorcism. It was just different. And I remember when I got back to the camper and I laid on the bed, my firearm was there. And I'm like, well, you know, I can always do that. And I remembered a friend of mine used to tell me all the time that suicide is a permanent solution to a temporary problem. And, you know, things were crawling all over me still. That didn't stop. I could feel them in the camper. That didn't stop. But Lakota kept saying, in September, I can do your ceremony. We can do your ceremony. So I decided I was going to wait maybe till the next day. And then the next day, I decided to wait till the next day. And the next day, I decided to wait till the next day. Because I wasn't going to give up, but I could only see 12 to 15 hours at a time. You know, when life happens, sometimes you can only go 15 minutes, you know? And then you can go another 15 minutes, and then you can go another 15 minutes, and maybe you can do an hour tomorrow before you consider something different. And then before you know it, a day goes by, and 2 days go by, and 2 weeks go by. And then things start to change. You know, my favorite second four-letter word is hope. I've got a lot of hope in my life, and I still do. And I had a lot of hope back then. I was scared as fucking shit. I didn't know what the end solution was going to be, but I knew I had a time frame I had to be able to do it in because I couldn't do what I was doing forever. And I was running out of people that said they could help me. So by this time, I was counting on the priest to come to the house and fix things. And if that didn't work, I had Lakota in September. So this was probably mid-July. So we had all of August and into September, Andrea, before I was out of people that could help me.
2 months can be a long time in that situation.
Yeah, it can be. So, Andrea, that is my first exorcism.
I can see why you said at the beginning you don't recommend it.
Yeah, I don't recommend it. And for y'all listening to the show, this is going to be edited down. And in the reality, this has taken me quite a while to be able to say this. And this has been very difficult. So thank you for everybody that supports us, supports the show, and everybody that supports me. So I still don't recommend an exorcism. So it's not been fun.
No, and for those of you listening, I know a lot of times I've said it before that it's a bit of an entertainment factor for the people listening, but this was very real for Wes, and standing in the same room with him while he tells his story is just, it's a lot. So thank you for sharing that, Wes. I know that was difficult.
You're welcome. And the cool thing is my buddy, my best friend Ty, is going to call here shortly. So I'm looking forward to that.
I can't wait for that. I've got a bunch of questions for Ty.
Yeah. So thank you, everybody, for listening to the show. Is there anything else that we're forgetting? Because my brain's not working right this second, I can promise.
I don't know. Just thank you to everyone that has tuned in. Tell your friends. I think, Wes, you've reached 11 countries, so that's a lot. But tell your friends, because this is, as Wes said, a story about hope.
It is. And somebody out there is going through something similar. And that's why I tell my story. Because sometimes people can't say, hey, I was in this situation or that happened to me. Well, I am happy to tell my story so that person doesn't feel alone. And then that person is not isolated. So that person sitting there saying, hey, well, you know, I'm not the only person on the planet this happened to as a child. And if he can get better, I can get better. And we take turns saving each other in this life. We take turns helping each other. And at the end of the day, the cage that's on us is our own imprisonment that we put on ourselves. You're not responsible for what happened to you as a child. However, as an adult, I believe it's our responsibility to do the hard work, heal what haunts us from the past, and become the person we're supposed to be. And that's what this show is about. Because I'm sharing my stuff so I can heal at a deep level. So I'm kind of being a little selfish with that. However, I also know there's other people that are getting healing messages from this. And I appreciate you, I love you, I respect you, and thank you so much for listening.
You've been listening to Enlightenment Unknown with Wes Coons, your guide on the quest for self-discovery and the version of you we haven't met yet.